Let me say yeah. Let me say yeah.
Welcome back to the Cheap Seats podcast. Yeah, we're back again. And the conference finals are done. As always, I got my co-host with me, Jimmy Ward. Jimmy, how are you? Jimmy, can you hear me?
I'm good, Phil. I'm good. You're sounding a little rough there, but that's okay. Hopefully yeah, I can hear you fine. It was just kind of, a little dicey in the beginning there, but that's all right. We'll get the internet sorted out there in the forest where you live, but no big deal.
Yeah, we were just talking about it beforehand here. I apologize. I live in rural Alberta. The old Telus hub isn't doing it for me. Please, if anyone has a hookup with Starlink, uh, reach out to the podcast and maybe we'll get that going. But in the meantime, you'll just have to deal with our choppy internet and hopefully you stick with us. Very, very excited today. We have a guest. We have like our first guest on the podcast. He's a friend of mine. Um, I have been working with this guy for about the past 5 years. He's been a loyal client of mine, and his name is Kyle Rossiter. He was drafted 30th overall by the Florida Panthers in 1998. He played for the Panthers and the Atlanta Thrashers. He played 11 NHL games, and he has a one assist, 1.9 penalty minutes. And we always say if you get to the show, you're probably a very good hockey player. So Kyle Rossiter, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing, buddy?
Doing well, thanks. Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, so we'll just let's just start at the beginning by getting your hockey story. So you were born in Edmonton, correct? Where did you play your minor hockey?
Yeah, that's right. Well, I grew up in Southwest Edmonton, close to where, the Century Park LRT is now. Um, and I played for Confed for a few years, and then when I started to develop in hockey and get, a little better and bigger than everyone, my dad actually moved me on paper out to Strathcona County, and I played out there, and I played with some good players out there. Played with Andrew Ference and another guy, Jared Smith, who was first overall picked in the Bantam draft the year before me. We got to learn a lot from those guys. And then Bantam AAA to the Spokane Chiefs out of the team at Sherwood Park. And then second year Bantam, I played midget AAA and junior A. Played junior A in Fort Sask and mid AAA I came back and played Southside Athletic Club, and I played with Jason Chimera there, Mike Bashai, and a bunch of guys that played in the dub like Scott Rolls and Tim Barlow. So we had an okay team. We were really young. We had three guys who were still 15. You should be still in Bantam, underage players, and we only had three grade 12s or second year midget players. So we were up against it, but we became pretty good. And like back then, Chimera was like 5'8", 150 still. He hadn't grown yet. And it was long. Nobody saw that guy as a 1,100 game NHL player at the time, that's for sure. So yeah, and then we played played major junior in Spokane for 4 years for Mike Babcock, and then went and played in the Florida organization, Atlanta, and then tried 1 year in Europe. Spent the whole year in the penalty box, and decided to come home and call it a career.
So your dad did the
You're
old
frozen, Phil.
I know here I'm sorry. So your dad did the old switcheroo at the address, hey, and got you out to Sherwood Park. How do you feel like that? Did you feel like that move really helped your trajectory into hockey?
Absolutely, yeah. Well, yeah, you know, as a first year Pee Wee, that specific year, there was only going to be three tier one teams. And my dad had it in his head that I was going to play tier one. So Fed didn't have one. So, um, I took a little bit of flack from, other 13-year-olds that thought I should be playing for them. And of course, when we played them, the Strathcona Warriors played against Confed, we kicked their ass. But yeah, like unless you lived in White Mud West, Northeast Braves, or Millwoods, those are catchments for tier one. So I ended up playing Pee Wee Double A and got exposed to a lot of different players because that league was provincial wide. So we had a North and a South division, and we made trips down to Calgary, and you played Bonnyville. So you'd win games 12-0, but then you go to Red Deer and play against like Brad Lieb and Brad Stewart and other guys who play the NHL, like Paul Manning, who was drafted in the second round. They had a good team. So, you know, it's, you know, Andrew Ference against Brad Stewart against Brad Lieb. Like there's Dylan Gary was another guy who played 5 years in the dub. Like there's some really good players. And, I wouldn't have seen those players very often playing in just the all Edmonton league. So I think it was, there's a lot of sacrifice on my dad's part. We used to have practice out in Mundare once a week. It was an hour each way. And then you got to get there half hour before, and then you shower and change. Like just a huge time commitment. And I look back at it now and, appreciative for sure.
Absolutely. Jimmy, go ahead.
So I'll kind of just transition. You end up getting drafted. Kind of, I just want to know, like, what was that experience like, and did you attend the draft?
Yeah, no, it was a cool experience. I did attend the draft. Going into that year, I didn't really have huge expectations because my 16-year-old year, I didn't play very much and I didn't put up a lot of points. Not that I was really part of my game, but I didn't dress every game, and when I did play dress, I didn't always play. So I didn't really know what to expect. I finished my first year really strong. Going into my draft year, uh, had a little bit of a bumpy start, and then I got scratched in Calgary, which is a bit of a, I guess people will look at it and go, "That's Babcock," but he scratched me in Calgary when my family was there, and then of course I played in Edmonton. But that kind of woke me up, and I really went on a tear. Played really well until you know until I got hurt. But then I at Christmas all of a sudden I was in the top round for the Central Scouting, and I just kept playing better and better. And then we lost a bunch of players at Christmas to World Juniors. We had a player in Slovakia, a player on the American team, and two on Canada, I think. So, or at least one. So there was all of a sudden we're down players, and and I'm thrust an even bigger role, and it really helped me there. It really flourished, and then I fought more, and anyway, it was great. And then yeah, right after the top prospects game, my first game back, I think, or second game back, I got crunched in the corner by Scott Parker, who was just huge back for a junior player, and he I was ready for it, but he just separated my shoulder, and I missed the last 10, 12 games of the year, and then the first round of the playoffs. So, and then they rushed me back, and it was pretty painful. We ended up hosting the Memorial Cup that year, and but I didn't quite get my game back to the same level as before. I was probably a little timid, so I think that hurt me a little bit. Probably fell out of the late first round into the early second because there's only 28 teams back then, so 27 teams. So it is what it is, but it was a great experience. It was in Buffalo, which is not exactly a sexy city, but it was my parents. They were still together at the time, and my agent, and it was a good weekend. It's nerve-wracking. You interview with these different teams, and sometimes it's just you and a scout, or you and a coach, or sometimes it's literally a boardroom full of every player personnel the team has, and you're trying to remember names, and you're trying to keep eye contact. It's pretty rough. So that's it's come a long way, I think, probably since then, but I'm sure they still have similar experiences for the guys.
Another question I had was, like, obviously, getting drafted is almost kind of, I don't want to say the easy part, but then afterwards, I'm like, how much contact do you end up having with the organization, and are they sort of giving you sort of instruction on what your path is going to be or your trajectory of where they see you coming in to the sort of transitioning to pro? Is there like a plan? Is there much contact with you through the off season?
Well, I think there probably is more now. When Florida picked me, they were not a great organization. Obviously now they're the Stanley Cup favorites going into this final. But,
Hmm.
in my time there, for perspective, there was two owners, I think three or four GMs and like six coaches. And I was only with the team for like 6 years. So like it was like the Oilers of the dark days or whatever you want to call it, right? So the decade of darkness. So um, I'm sure that there's better contact now. Like it's, things evolve and change. Like back then, they thought they were cutting edge. We go to conditioning camp, they'd bring in a chef and they'd give him like 5 ingredients to work with. And if you wanted cheese, it was non-fat cheese. Because back then everyone thought everything needed to be non-fat. So it was just pure egg whites and chicken breast and cheese, non-fat cheese slices and no non-fat margarine. Like it was weird. You know what I mean? Like just it's come a long way. Yeah, nutrition. People know so much more about nutrition now. People know so much more about how to train for a sport like hockey. In the off season, we were doing a lot of powerlifting type stuff, and I don't know if they do that as much anymore. You know what I mean? And now I think it's probably more dynamic movements, and it's the contact. I wouldn't say there was a lot of contact really. But I'm sure there's better systems now. They probably have a WhatsApp chat with all their prospects, and they probably have some sort of like Google spreadsheet where you can check in, and let them know what you did today or whatever. You know what I mean? Like there's just better things now, and they probably have someone whose job that is to keep in touch with everyone. And I don't think there was back then. Like I think that would have been like the head of player, some guys in junior, and he's probably not ever going to see those guys in junior, like personally, So yeah.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. So after Spokane, you went pretty much after you aged out and then went right to the AHL with, I think it
Yeah, I
was it
didn't age out.
Louisville at the time?
Yeah, I didn't age out per
Yeah.
se because you can do the 20-year-old year, but the
Right, right,
earliest
yeah.
you can go the earliest you can go pro if you're not playing in the NHL with the CHL agreement is at 20. So
Yeah.
I did my 4 years, 16 through 19, and then yeah, Louisville was the American League affiliate that year for the Panthers. Again, not a great organization. So they put us in Louisville. Louisville folds after 2 seasons because the guy they parted with was stealing money and blah, blah, blah. He got indicted. So, so then the next year they're loaning players out to all over the league to, there was 4 or 5 of us in Salt Lake City, and there was 3 or 4 guys in Bridgeport, and there was 2 or 3 guys in Hershey. So, it's Chicago did that to Carolina this year. Chicago went independent, so Carolina was loaning their guys out. It sucks, It's not good for the team either because they have no control over their players. Because you know, I was on a team, in Salt Lake that the coach's job, Don Hayes' job, was to develop the Dallas Stars prospects. So you know, if he's got to scratch someone, one of the Panthers guys seems like an easier choice. You know what I mean? So
Absolutely.
I
And
wouldn't
that,
say he wasn't fair, but it just, it's not the same.
yeah, so you get the call up, I think if I remember right, your first game would have been January, with the Florida Panthers. Keenan's the head coach. Pavel Bure's there, Luongo's there. Like, what was that like? Just knowing you were gonna sort of play, you finally gonna play an NHL hockey game. I mean, that's got to be incredible.
Yeah, it was later in the season than that. It was after the trade deadline for sure because I was considered an emergency call up. They only have so many call ups after the trade deadline, so it was late in the year. I can't remember how late, but yeah, I got 2 games. Brad Ferentz got suspended for something, so they called me up, and my first game was at home, and it was Keenan, and he was trying to have some fun with me, and like talking about game planning. He did pokes his, all of a sudden, what do you think, Rossiter? I don't know any of these players. I don't know who any of these guys are. So
Yeah.
the first game was against Pittsburgh in Florida, and he just said, if you find yourself out there against Kovalev, don't look at the fucking puck and just bear it. Just don't. He'll make you look stupid. So I don't know if I ever actually had a shift against him. Maybe I can't remember. And then the next game I played, we flew to Buffalo, and that might have actually been one of the last games of the season. Anyway, I went down the next day from Buffalo. So, and then yeah, it was a great experience. Really, really cool. And then, thought I'd be getting more games than that down the road, but hockey's tough, man.
Did you
A lot of
feel like
politics.
what? Yeah, did you feel like when you like just from a pure game perspective when you play, did you gain confidence and be like, I feel like I could do this? Or was it kind of like sort of hang on and survive and
No,
enjoy the
no, no.
experience? No?
No, the difference in the NHL and the AHL is smaller than people think. The speed is similar. Um, the communication is better. The positional play of the players is better. So in some ways, it's easier. But big difference is the top end players in the NHL are so much better than anything you see in the AHL. Like, the top scorer in the AHL, Maverick Bork, played last night. Was he a factor in
Mhm.
that game? No, he wasn't. Right? Doesn't mean he can't be a factor down the road for Dallas. Like, Stankoven was obviously a pretty good factor at times this year, but you know, very few dominant AHL players end up being dominant NHL players. They end up being good NHL players, serviceable NHL players. The best players in the NHL often just skipped right over the AHL. It's easier to see that now than it was then. Back then too, there was without the salary cap, it was harder for an 18, 19, 20-year-old to play in the NHL. They just didn't even really get a sniff. So, it was a big deal back then when like two players from that draft played the next year. But now it's commonplace to see five, six, seven guys from the draft immediately jump to the NHL. But you need those guys making $1 million to make your roster, your salary cap work, right? So back then you could have a whole bunch of guys making, you know, back then it was still less than than $1 million, but more than the minimum, right? Now
Mhm.
guys are making like, the rookie salary cap's really not a whole lot higher than the league minimum, so, which is still a very great living.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, one of the so you ended up going to Atlanta's organization. Like, take me through how that ended up happening, because obviously Florida being a second round pick, or I mean, today you would have been a first round pick. Um, how did
Yeah,
that sort of come
I was
about?
their first pick.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it just didn't seem like there was room to grow within the organization. So, I the first year I was in the minors the whole year. Second year I got 2 games. Third year I got 3 games. Fourth year I got uh, 5 games. So, four games, whatever. And it just, there was a chance. Some of it's timing and luck. There was definitely a time where, because every time I got called up, it seemed to be for a short injury, and it's not impossible. I did gain at least one game where the guy was like healthy to come back, but I played well the game before. They're like, no, we're not taking him out. So I definitely have to take some responsibility for that. But um, there was one time where I would have been the next call up almost surely, and I had a high ankle sprain, and then Lucas Krychek went up and he stayed up for, 25, 30 games because it was just a constant stream
Mhm.
of injuries, but not enough for me to also get called up. You know what I mean? So that was
Yeah.
tough. Tough to see that, and you're like, oh shit. But yeah, basically, it appeared that there wasn't. They didn't have really a spot for me, and so I approached my agent. I said, maybe we could see about a trade, and they acquiesced and they got me traded, and I got swapped for a guy named Camille Purosh, and then oddly enough, played my couple games up with Atlanta. The way the seasons were then, they didn't line up, so their season was done. I played the last 2 games of their season. They're done. They're on the golf course. And I went back to Chicago in the minors, and we were playing against San Antonio, my old team, and Camille Piro hit me from behind, and I separated my shoulder and ended up missing the whole first round of the playoffs. So
Jeez.
yeah, it sucked, but at least they're more symmetrical now because I had a bad separation in junior and used to stick up really prominently. Now they both stick up the same. So
It's all even now.
yeah,
So from
totally.
there you went over to Europe. You played, I think it was in Slovakia, and then a couple games in Italy. What kind of take me through that journey?
Yeah, no. So I started the year, I played 2 exhibition games with the Swedish team. I had a contract for the whole season. I played 2 exhibition games. The first one we won 8-1. I'm like, this league's, it's not a joke, but it wasn't nearly as good as the American League. It was the second Swedish league. And the next game we lose to the same team, 8-1. And at the end of the game, someone punched me from the bench, so I punched them back and whatever. It was a big skirmish. They told me, like, if you get in a fight, don't drop your gloves. So we didn't. Anyway, next day they call me and they say, yeah, this isn't going to work out. We're cutting you. And it's like, I had a contract the whole season. They flew me over there with my the contract's not worth the paper it's written on in Europe. Like, Europe is awful, man. Like, Europe is a country, is a continent, fine. European hockey, super shady. So, they give me like, yeah, you can stay at the apartment for like another week until if you can find a job. So, and that's another thing too. European agents also super shady. Like, they're not working for you. Like, a lot of times they're working for the team. They're like a recruiter, so they're like, yeah, I got a job for you. Like, is this the best one? Yep, it's the best one. And you find out later it's not the best one. It's the one that they get paid for. You know what I mean? Like, they're not asking for 3% of your salary. They're asking the teams, like, find us a player, we'll give you a bonus, right? So anyway, they put me on this team in Finland called Kalpa. They're actually a powerhouse now, I think. But at the time, they just got promoted from the second division. And the only reason they got promoted is that the year before was the lockout. And two of their owners, Sami Kapanen and Kimmo Timonen, both NHL All-Stars at the time, or they owned the team. So they just moved back home and played for that team. And they brought over another player named Adam Hall, who played in Tampa. And so they had three, like, really two good players for the second division in Finland, and they dominated. And normally in that system, you win, you go up, you lose, you finish last, you get relegated. So they thought they were going up. They said, no, we're not going to move you up. It was a special circumstance. And they said, no, we're going to move you up. But I guess the decision was made kind of late, and they didn't have a budget for the opposite of parity over in that league at the time. I think we were like 8-48 at one point or something like that. So near the end of the season, they're, again, contracts aren't worth shit. So they kind of approached me, Nikos Chelios, one of the other imports, Chris Chelios' younger cousin, and a guy named Thomas Kirka, who played over in the American League too, in Carolina's system. They approached us, said, hey, we're looking to trim budget, just so you know. So, found a job in Asiago, Italy, and sadly that's where my career ended, basically. That hockey was okay. There's every team basically had two lines of, like, North American players and two lines of Italians. So if you're out against North American players, all right, you got to play sound defensively, all this stuff. If you're out against the Italian players, you felt like you could just run roughshod over them. So it was, but if you hit somebody hard, the roughing, elbowing, boarding, whatever, like, you knock someone over, it's a penalty. That was Europe. It was frustrating and didn't garner me a lot of attention for the next year because, it was considered a dirty player. So it is what it is. But that's kind of, my last two seasons weren't very enjoyable. So I just thought the lockout year was tough. There was only so many imports you can dress in the American League, and because not everyone got locked out, there were players that should have been playing in the NHL that the teams told, like, don't just go play in the minors, like Brad Larson, the coach for Columbus that just got canned, right? JP Vigier, these guys should have been playing for the Thrashers, but now they're playing. And because the American League is a developmental league, they wanted, you could only have so many veteran players, and a veteran was a pretty loose definition. It was just more than 250 games pro at the American League or higher. So, there was a guy on my team who was 28. He wasn't a veteran because most of his career, was started late because he played 4 years of college, then he played 3 years in the coast. So, here I am when I was 23 or 24, and I was considered a veteran. So I kind of got buried there, unfortunately, and didn't get a lot of games in. I got traded to Pittsburgh, and that was going well for a while until it wasn't. And, me and someone named Marc-Andre Fleury got stapled to the bench and didn't play the rest of the season. And he's going to the Hall of Fame, but my career was pretty much done in by Michel Therrien, and he just said, yeah, you're not playing. Michel Therrien played 4 defensemen in one game. 4 defensemen plus Matt Murley from Spit and Chicklets fame, who's a forward. He dressed 5 instead of dressing a capable defenseman like myself, and he'd playing like 4 minutes a game or whatever. I usually played 20. He just just like, you're not playing a game. So that's what it is.
Was there ever an explanation for something like that? Because it would seem kind of strange that
It,
he would
no,
do
not
it.
really. Not really. Like, I'll take some accountability. Like I was playing well and then I had a couple bad games, but like not like catastrophic games, but we were on a losing streak. And that's why Fleury got stapled to the bench. Like they actually he
Mhm.
ended up playing a guy named Andy Chiodo, who
Yeah,
wasn't even on the team when I was there. Like initially, they called him up from the coast and he became the starter for the playoffs with a guy named Danny Sabarin. And
Sabrin, yeah.
Sabrin and I were on the playoff roster, which meant we were entitled to a playoff bonus. And conveniently, the two of us who didn't play, who got scratched most of the playoffs, they forgot to send them out. And then we both filed a grievance with the PA, and all of a sudden, oh, sorry, we just forgot to send them out. So it was, and my now ex-wife and my daughter, they went back to Spokane, and I was hanging out at the bar because we got 50% off food. You don't get paid in the playoffs, and yeah, I think I was up late and I wasn't hungover. You don't get hungover when you're 24, but I reeked of booze, but I was just super mean in practice and I was just being a dick to everyone. And Terry liked that. And they called me up to play. I had to drive myself to Binghamton and they had to pull me off the ice in the Black Aces thing. That was another thing. He separated the Black Aces from the real team, which was really like, so we had practice like six people. It was really demoralizing. And yeah, I played the game, went to make a pass up the wall, missed the winger, and then defenseman kept it in, hit a guy in the slot, the guy sniped. Yeah, literally, I think the quote in the paper he said it was a very, 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 very bad play, and it was just like, okay, like even the media guys like, man, sorry, I didn't want to print it, but like that's all I wanted to talk about. I'm like, well, we did. It wasn't an overtime winner or anything like that. It wasn't the only goal they scored. We actually came back and won the series. But that which just prolonged my fucking pain of we were practice with six guys and it was such a joke. And all the guys were coming up from the coast, so they had no money and you don't get paid. So
Mhm.
they didn't want to like do anything. And they were terrified of like going to the bar and thinking they're gonna get caught. Like I felt like a grizzled vet, I felt like I was untouchable because basically I knew wasn't gonna play anyway. So I was just fucking riding it out. So it was tough. Yeah, like I said, wasn't last couple of years weren't very fun. A lot of losing and a lot of sitting. A lot of sitting the one year, a lot of losing the next year. And I didn't want to like go back and try to work my way up from the coast. And so I just said, that's it. Got my real estate license, and here I am 18 years later, getting Phil to take pictures for him.
Yeah, you
That's
bet.
great.
And we kind of flew through a lot of things, and like you just mentioned, I like Kyle and I when we have appointments together, we get to just kind of chat, and um
Mhm.
I've heard a lot of his hockey stories while doing some photos for him, and I said to him, I'm like, man, like some of this stuff would be absolute gold on a podcast. And one of the stories that just like stands out to me is one of the fights you were in. I think it was Scott Parker, right? You fought Scott
Um,
Parker?
I fought him in junior. Did not willingly fight him, but it's on YouTube. It's not very. I mean, I got a lot of confidence out of it, and I got a lot of respect for my teammates because nobody had ever fought him, and nobody had survived fighting him. But yeah, I used to run him over all the time. He wasn't a very good skater, right? So I used to hit him all the time and knock him on his ass, but I didn't think that I had to fight him. But in Kelowna, we were beating him pretty bad, and he lined up next to me and he just goes, "We're going," and and then he starts. You can look it on YouTube. He swings his stick like a lightsaber at me. I tap him a little bit, and then he just swings it even harder, and then his gloves are off, and he's all over me. But I was able to come back and hit him with a couple good ones, and then basically just duck and cover. And then yeah, like the next day I put my helmet on. I didn't have a mark anywhere on me, so if it looks bad in the video, don't worry about it. I was fine. But my helmet didn't fit the next day, so he must have hit the helmet pretty hard.
Jeez. Did he say
Because
anything to you after the fight?
no, he was an absolute
No.
snap show psycho. Yeah, in fact, if you watch the video after the refs get in there, he tries to like throw a punch over the top and like makes all four of us go down in a huge heap. Like just he he was on so much gear and stuff. Like, nobody looks like that at 19 years old. You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
well, no, his beard's
It's
longer than yours, Jimmy.
I
He's
know.
six.
I remember. I'll never forget. Gosh, I was pretty young when I first saw him. The first time I saw him, he was in. I think he played a couple games with Colorado, and I
Definitely
was
did,
like,
yeah.
I'm like, where on earth did this guy come from? Because at the time I'm not
Alaska,
really.
baby. He's an Alaskan.
Yeah, I'm like,
Eagle
but yeah,
River.
and then you see him. You see, yeah, I've seen some of his stuff on YouTube, and I'm thinking,
Well, that's the
geez.
thing. If you watch the show Fight Ice Guardians, like all those
Hmm.
guys, that's my era. Like I didn't
Yeah,
doesn't mean I fought those guys, but like, Parker, McGrattan, Goddard. I played with Goddard. He was very tough. He fought a lot that year in Louisville. Um, who else in that video? Yeah, it's a lot of those guys are from my era, and it's a tough job. You know, I've
couldn't
you know Sean
imagine.
Thor Sean Thornton jumped me. That's probably the other famous NHL heavy. He jumped me in the minors because I ran over and a guy named Gary Volk was sent down to the minors, and he was just kind of playing out his contract. And I mean, you carry the puck down my left side, I'm going to run you. Like that was the game back then. It's a little different now, but
Hmm.
yeah, Thornton has. We have a lot of respect for each other, and I think if I ran into him, I think he'd probably give me a handshake and want to chat. He seemed like a pretty good guy. So,
That's awesome.
mhm.
do you and then Jimmy, did you want to ask Kyle about the World Juniors?
Yeah, actually, I was gonna lead with that, but I went straight into pro. So World Juniors, like, how did that sort of come about? Was that something that was on your radar? Were you surprised? Um,
It
was there an
wasn't.
inkling?
No, you know what? I mean, Babcock told me that I was going to play on the team. Like he felt that I was capable. It
Hmm.
wasn't really on my radar until about halfway through. Well, I mean, because I didn't have a very good 18-year-old season the year I got drafted. Like we were a bad team and I was a bad player. Like, I just didn't have a good year. Like basically regressed from my draft year. And then, um, you know, had some meetings over the summer and, just we're a better team and I played better and I started the year well and yeah, then I was on their radar and went to camp and still didn't really know if I was going to make it because you look at the other players there and you're like, oh, he's got more points than me and this I don't know who this guy is or whatever, but yeah, I ended up making the team and I played quite a bit. Like I was paired up with Barrett Jackman and we played. We started most penalty kills and we started a lot of periods and games and stuff. So, I mean, my ice time slipped a little bit in like the semi or the bronze medal game, but I don't know if I was just getting tired or if the speed was catching up to me. I don't know, but it was. I did take a fair amount of penalties in there though, and that was just part of that European reffing, man. Like just stuff that I would do effectively and not get called in the dub was getting called. Stuff like the can opener and stuff like that. This was all before the obstruction rules too, right? So
Yeah.
you know, it was just different. But yeah, yeah, took a lot of minors. So yeah, if I very much, very much like my European time, I wish I'd tried to adjust my game sooner. You try to be true to
Mhm.
yourself and your game, but sometimes that doesn't necessarily work with the style of play over there. So like in Europe, they just kept wanting me to. My 1 year I was in Europe, oh, be physical, be physical. We want you to play hard, and so I do it, and then you just get penalties and penalties. Like I have a hit in Europe there as like my second game, and like there was no penalty on the play, but when the player failed to get up after like 2-3 minutes, they pointed at me and said you're out, and I got suspended for 2 games, and it cost me 500 euros, which was a fairly substantial amount. I wasn't making very much money, you know what I mean? So, it was
Mhm.
just yeah, it was. In hindsight, I should have tried to become a more offensive, skilled player. Not just tried to let that part of my game go and more and just not just pass up on some of the hits, I guess. Back then,
Why don't you?
I was like a dog. Sorry.
No, it's all good. Why don't you let some people know some of the guys that were on that team?
Well,
Yeah, I mean, in hindsight, we probably weren't one of the strongest rosters ever. But like any team, there's some good players that could have been playing there that were in the NHL. But yeah, we had some really good players. We had Danny Heatley was on the team. Manny Malhotra was the captain. Um, Barrett Jackman obviously had a great career. Uh, Jamie Lundmark was a high pick of the Rangers. I know Jimmy will appreciate that.
Yeah.
Also had a disappointing career.
Yeah. Also, yeah.
Yeah, Brad Richards had a great career. He was my he was my roommate for the camp. He was so paranoid about getting cut. There was really no chance he was ever going to get cut. Mark Bell had a decent career. Mike Ribeiro had a great career. He's had some off ice issues since he's retired. Um, I was forgetting someone really key. Oh, Michael Ryder, my roommate at the tournament, had a really strong career too. So, I mean, some good forwards. Oh, and then I'm forgetting probably the guy who played the most games of all would be Jay Bomeister and Spezza. So those two guys were both 16, and they didn't play major parts on the team, but super rare for us 16-year-old to make it. We had two. Like so, I'm not sure if that speaks super highly of our depth, but we had two, and they were, Jay especially played a little bit more as the series as the rounds went on, and Spezza didn't play a ton. He was too good at training camp to cut him, so he was the 13th forward for most of the tournament. Obviously had a great career.
Yeah, those are some yeah, I remember a lot of those names, obviously the high end ones, but even a guy like Mark
Sure,
Bell, I think he spent time in Chicago.
definitely, yeah,
Malhotra ended up becoming a pretty good two-way center, even though he
totally.
was touted to be he was a fairly high pick and he
Well,
carved
the
a
weird
nice
thing about
career.
Manny is that he played as a 17-year-old. Then he made the NHL at 18. They're like, yeah, we're not lending this guy out. But then they lent him out at 19. So he was a rare returning player. I don't know if it's ever happened. Returning player, but didn't play the year before. So we didn't have a lot of returning players. The only one we had really was Tyler Belk. We would have a guy named Blair Betts, another Ranger you're familiar with, I'm
Yeah,
sure. But
yeah.
but Betsy was hurt. And that was a foreshadowing for his entire career. So he's a local guy. He lives in Sherwood Park. I ran into him every now and then.
Yeah, I liked him. He was a nice bottom six forward for the Rangers there for a bit. Ended up going to Calgary, right, Phil, for a bit.
Yep. I
Sorry,
think he
I'm just
played in
Yeah,
plugging in
Philly
my
as well.
computer here.
yeah. No, it's all right.
He's a good puck doku pull if you have a chance. You
Yeah.
know puck doku? Yeah, you familiar with the
Yeah,
game?
yeah, 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 yeah. I play it. I
Yeah,
play it
every
quite often. Yeah.
every morning, man.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. I try to hit the under 1% on every one, but not
Oh,
always
yeah,
successful.
I usually have a time crunch. I'm trying to get that done in a few other word games and stuff. So, you know, if there's the under 1%, like let's see who I got today. I got some under 1%, but some of them are just like that's Bogosian, and it's like 28%. Like I just want to finish it up and get on with my shower. Let's see
I
today.
didn't check it. I didn't check it today.
Well, I'm gonna ruin it for you. So I had a Taylor
Oh.
Pyatt one for 1% with
Ooh.
Buffalo, Phoenix.
Okay.
I had Jason Cullimore 1%, uh,
Tampa.
Tampa and Chicago,
Yeah.
and then yeah, then 7% Taylor Hall, Phoenix, and Chicago, his two lesser known teams. And then yeah, I got
Yeah.
like Ray Whitney at 11%. I got Solan. I was surprised Solani was 11% on Phoenix and San Jose. Like, most people don't really think of him as a Phoenix guy because wasn't Phoenix.
Winnipeg Jet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, most people would associate him with Tampa, but yeah, I have some higher ones. My total score was at 111, but like I said, just trying
Not bad.
to get through it.
Not bad.
Yeah.
And and,
Well, some
and we
days are
were we
better than
were at
others.
an appointment one time, and I remember you were able to use yourself in one. Do you remember what that combination was?
I've been able to do it about 3 or 4 times. So Winnipeg, aka Atlanta, and Florida, of course. I was able to use it for Florida and WHL, and I was able to use it for Team Canada and either Florida or Winnipeg. So those
Yeah.
three for sure. I used Chimera a lot because he's actually played for 4 or 5 teams, 5 teams, I think.
Yeah,
And
there's a couple
you
suitcases
know,
out there. You can just kind
I
of plug them
always
in, and
I I always my go-to is usually Yager Cylinder. Those are pretty
oh, sure,
safe.
but like you and everyone else, but like Josh, if you get to
Yeah.
know Josh Green and Chimera, my two former training partners, I think Josh played with about 7 or 8 teams, and Chimera played for Oilers, Columbus, Islanders, Capitals, and he finished with Anaheim. So
Was he
I
in
don't know if I'm
was he in Phoenix too at one point?
no,
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 no.
but And then Vern Fiddler's got 3 teams, Sotheby's got 3 teams. There's local guys
Mhm.
who are not super well known that I know that, you can,
Sotheby
so
was a Capitals pick,
he's
wasn't he?
Capitals pick, but he also
Right?
played
Yeah.
for Anaheim and Dallas. So
Yeah. Okay.
yeah, I think he works for the Ducks now. He's scouting.
Actually, I think there's a funny story. I think my men's league goalie was traded from Spokane as a prospect the year I think you guys got LaBarbera.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and
Yeah,
funny
so that
story is
was
Barber didn't actually play for us in the league final. He got benched. It was kind of a Skinner situation, but we didn't come back to him. We used our other guy, hmm, Tyler McKay, and yeah, it was tough because LaBarbera was from Prince George, and we're in Prince George, and he just stunk. So uh, they went back with McKay, and McKay won 2 games, and then we played him in the finals against Kootenay. We lost in 6. We ran into Dan Blackburn was super good back then, and he could have had a good career with the Rangers if
tragic with the hand.
yeah. Heard he's a
Yeah.
beauty. He lives in Dallas, I guess, and was just a party animal. Some of my buddies here know him from they go to a Vegas tournament every year and they invite him. I don't know what the connection is, but yeah.
Oh, nice.
And
It's not
you
bad.
still go to Spokane every summer, right, Kyle? What is it about
Yeah.
Spokane that you love so much?
Well, I mean, at first that's where my ex-wife is from, so we go visit her family. But now it's my old roommate, my best man at my first wedding there, like Derek Schutz. He's moved back there. We also reconnected with an old friend of mine and her husband, and we've vacationed with them, and they give us a free place to stay, and we golf with them, and it's just you know with my wife now and that couple, we just really enjoyed it. It's so green and lush, and the streets are wide, and it's a great place to live and raise a family. I mean, there's just like anywhere, there's tough parts of town, but it's you know if I had to choose a place to live, you know it would be in my top 5. Like I wouldn't be like rushing to LA or something like that. You know what I mean? Like this, it's a big enough city where it's got all the amenities, but it's got, it's not super expensive. But I just really like it. And
Yeah, this
you walk
episode
around
brought
and
to you
stuff like
by
that down by the rink. Beautiful area.
yeah. This episode brought to you by Tourist Spokane.
Spokane tourism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jimmy, do you have any more questions for
It's
Kyle
pretty
on
good, man.
his
It's a good place, man.
on his career or anything like that? Or are you guys ready to talk some
No,
Oilers?
no,
Okay,
I'm ready to
so
talk,
Let's do it.
review what happened in the conference final. Just thanks,
um
Kyle. I mean, those stories are incredible. They're always fun for us to kind of like guys like us who didn't play at that level to kind of get a kind of behind the scenes look. So I really appreciate you sharing those stories.
Oh, for sure, guys. I just enjoy talking hockey with people who know what they're talking about. So,
Well, we hope.
uh,
well and
because sometimes you get stuck in a conversation with someone who's, insists that, Bouchard stinks, or,
Yeah.
Fogel's the answer to all everything. You know what I mean? Like just stuff like that, right? So,
Yeah, I totally know what you mean.
well and you must and like you obviously you see the game at a different through different eyes, right? Like you've actually been on NHL ice in an NHL game. So, which 95% of people have never done, right? Or probably 99% of people have never done. But we can start with the
yeah,
Oilers series if
I
you
think you're
guys want.
probably a little low on that number, but yeah, you're right.
Sure. What's the first question, Philly?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll just say and I know I keep referring to it, but Kyle and I actually we had an appointment the day after game 3, and
Hmm.
this guy here, he was not worried one bit about the Edmonton Oilers when it kind of seemed like the city was kind of bashing everybody, bench Skinner, trade Nurse, get rid of this guy, get rid of that guy. After game 3, it kind of felt like a lot of people were down and out and defeated. Kyle, you were like super calm, cool, and you weren't worried at all. What was your reasoning for that?
Bill, your crappy internet cut out. Which series are we talking about here? Dallas?
Edmonton,
Sorry.
Dallas. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I thought he said LA. So yeah, I mean, yeah, I was pretty confident they were going to be able to tie up the series, yeah, two, and then from there it's a best of three, and we talked about that. Um, they have these stretches. I mean, we saw it last night even, right, where they don't have shots for like 50 minutes, and that's not good. But last night they were able to weather it. You know, I saw them carry the play so well through games one and two, and then the first bit of game three there that, you know, I just felt that and if they went down 3-1, you know, I definitely would have thought they'd be toast. Like, I mean, we see it come back, see teams come back from 3-1 all the time. It actually hasn't happened this year, but you know, it does happen all the time in hockey. It doesn't happen in basketball or other sports very often. But yeah, I wasn't concerned. You know, I just thought they were carrying the play, and on paper, Dallas just looked like a better team. Like, you look at those lines, but you know, you got to give it to the Oilers, man. They played as a nice cohesive unit. They got their power play going, and they've got the penalty kill rolling at an incredible pace. I'm not sure if their penalty kill is exceptional or if Dallas just had a hard time on the power play. Probably a combination of, but yeah, it was, yeah, beautiful thing to watch, and everyone that was at the game yesterday that's talked to me just said the same thing. Incredible.
Yeah, Jimmy's a huge Jack Michaels fan, and I saw that call
Oh,
on
yeah.
I saw that call on online today, and it was pretty electric. I'll give him that. You know, as a Flames fan, you know, Jack Michaels, he drives me nuts, but you know, I have to admit he can call a hockey game, and
I don't know how
it
he could
was.
talk after that minute. You know, like that minute, his voice, like he was just, oh, I don't know how he does it, man. He's a really nice man too. I've met him many occasions, and we're friends on Facebook. We chat a little bit on Messenger and stuff, and yeah, he's a good guy.
Yeah,
Very
so
talented.
one of the things that I was saying is, you know, people were all about like they were talking about Chris Tanev in Dallas and how he basically was able to shut down the Colorado Avalanche. Um and then I just kind of feel like the Oilers had their way with him a little bit there, and it just kept coming up like, oh, Chris Tanev, he knows Connor McDavid. He's played against him a lot from when he played in Calgary and Vancouver. Chris Tanev knows McDavid, and then I just kind of said on the flip side, but I'm like, you know what? But Connor McDavid knows Chris Tanev too. So
Totally.
I'll ask Jimmy
He,
this one too.
yeah.
Like, what do you think about that kind of flip? And then obviously Tanev gets the broken foot too. So
Well, I mean, I listened to Paul Maurice today talk about, they asked him about McDavid and Draisaitl, and Maurice basically said, listen, there's nobody in the NHL that can play those two one-on-one. You have to shut them down as a collective of five. So when everyone comes into a series and says, well, this guy's going to be on McDavid, it's like, good luck. There isn't a defenseman in the NHL that can shut him down one-on-one. Like, you just hope that you minimize the quality of the high danger chance that's coming. Um, I think that in order to slow down guys like McDavid and Draisaitl lines, it has to start 200 feet from the net. So you have to have a heavy forecheck, and you have to make sure your F3 is like lots of pressure through the neutral zone, because the best way to stop the Oilers is to try and prevent them from entering the zone. That's why you saw a lot of times Vancouver, despite being thin on the wing, they were able to have stretches of good play because they pressured up ice. The times where they would try to just strictly defend is when the Oilers would pretty much have their way. And I think that's also, I think it's got to be incredibly difficult to go up against a McDavid, and your thought process is not to attack. So if you're not attacking, you're almost in a way essentially waiting to get scored on. So I think Dallas, like obviously Tanev breaking his foot probably doesn't help in terms of mobility. You got to have your feet at its best against someone who's probably has the best edge work of all time, who can cut inside outside equally as well. So I don't think there's anyone that can really contain him. You really have to make sure all five guys are on the same page.
Kyle, how do
Just
you
from what I
defend
see
against a
anyway.
guy like that?
Well, it's the old expression, there's two cliches. One is the best defense is a good offense. And if they got, Jimmy said it well, like if they keep the Oilers hemmed in their end, it's going to be hard for Connor to do anything 5-on-5, right? And yeah, you can't stop them. You can only hope to contain them. And that's, it's just like any, great player in any sport, like teams couldn't beat Michael Jordan, but like someone like Steph Curry or LeBron James, these guys made it to the finals several times and failed to win. And it's because, instead of getting 35 points, they held them to 28 points. Like Connor's going to get his points, Leon's going to get his points, but they got to try to limit them to one instead of three or four. You know what I mean? And it's, you know, like it's the biggest key to this series is, can Stuart Skinner not have a bad game, like not tank a game and just kind of boot one in this crowd like he has in the past few series, because I don't know if we can afford to just give away a game due to poor goaltending. When you've got such a good goalie on the other side, I know Ottinger is an excellent goalie. Bobrovsky's probably even better, and they've got a guy Sasha Barkov who's, he's given up. He gave up one goal against Pasternak, and he gave up 0 goals against Panarin and 0 goals against first round, who
Kucherov.
they play?
Kucherov.
Kucherov at 5-on-5. So this guy, he's the new Bergeron, but with more offense. I don't know. We'll see. He's going to play against one of Connor or Leon. He can't play against both, and that's where Edmonton's got a bit of an advantage. But they're very deep. They got Kachuk and um, guys like Verhage, and of course Reinhardt had 57 goals this year. Like these guys can. You got some players, man. I mean, you don't get to the finals without players.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
it's going to put a lot of.
go ahead, Jimmy. Go ahead.
It's going to put a. There's going to be a huge emphasis on Lundell, who will probably have to get the other line, who's also, they call him Baby Barkov, for his defensive play.
Yeah,
And
their
then
third line's got some jam. Like that I think they're not going to get much out of like what is it, Lombard, Oposo, and whoever. But that the line of like Luosterainen and Lundell, and I don't know who else they got. Like they got some players, man, and they got more, probably more offense from the back end. Like realistically, the Oilers have Bouchard and Ekholm. I mean, I know CC's got a goal in the playoffs, and Broberg's got a goal, and Nurse has a few assists, but they're not bringing a whole lot. And a little surprised. I don't know how you guys feel. I thought they were going to take CC out for Broberg instead of Desharnais, but
that's what I thought
whatever.
too.
I mean, in all fairness, like CC does have much more playoff and overall experience, but I was just a little surprised. I mean, I didn't look at closely at all the underlying metrics and numbers. Like I know Desharnais was the second worst minus on the team, but I don't know if they look at plus minus anymore. Really, I think it's all about the, you know, goals expected above and below average and all that stuff. So,
Yeah, the underlying numbers had Darren as the fourth best defenseman, and from what I looked at, so I mean that's pretty much where he had been slotted anyway. It's yeah.
yeah, he's a good 5'6" guy and a hell of a penalty.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like he's just they call him seaweed or something like that in the minors because he's kind of always like touching you. Like he's just long and got big long stick and long levers and just always get a piece of you with the puck, right? So
I think he'll get back into that series actually, just based on how heavy Florida is.
yeah,
Like
possibly. I mean, all it
yeah.
takes is a loss. Like Broberg's been
Yeah.
in for 2 wins, right? So
Mm-hmm.
and he's costed himself well, and he's no reason to take him out yet. So
Right.
yeah.
Right. But I could see them
How
keeping I think they'll keep Broberg and maybe move CC out if
Maybe.
maybe. But I guess Nelblock's got a pretty good pulse on things. He
Yeah,
seemed to touch all the right buttons.
I should have asked Cody today at the ramen place. He probably would have enjoyed that.
Yeah, yeah, he would have loved that.
You don't know me, but by the way, are you getting scratched?
Yeah, yeah, just asking.
so it's got to be pretty encouraging though, Kyle, for to see Stuart Skinner kind of steal a game yesterday, hey?
Stewart, probably the best game he's ever played in the NHL, and I think it's think a lot of people have said that, but I mean, yeah, it's encouraging. Like his confidence has got to be riding high. Had to be pretty low when he got pulled for 2 games for Pickard, So I don't know. I've always been a supporter of him in our group chats with my friends, uh, sometimes to my detriment. But I really, because my friends like blow up that we got to find ourselves a goalie. I'm like, where are you going to find one that's available that's better than him? And that's the thing. And then they point out, he's had some bad playoff statistics, but in general he's been a pretty solid goalie. And goalies are really hard to acquire through the open market. Like you almost have to draft, and like Bobrovsky is like the only one I can think of in the last bunch of years that was like an unrestricted free agent, big signing, and he's also the top paid goalie that's like currently playing. Like I think maybe Price might make more money, but he's not. He's on LTIR, so you know super rare. But like you look at Shesterkin drafted, Ottinger drafted, Demko drafted, like Hellebuck drafted. Like these, they don't grow on trees, man. So if they really want a goalie, draft one in the first round. If there's someone out there that's worthwhile, I don't know.
Yeah, and Skinner, he's so young still too, right?
Definitely
He
draft
just has it like written all over him that he would
develop as
leave.
well.
Yeah, sorry, we crashed into each other there a little bit, but yeah, I was just saying, like Stuart Skinner, he's like still so young, right? And he's just got it like written all over him. Like Edmonton gives up on him, he goes somewhere else, and he just thrives, right? So
Yeah, the
for
Devin
for me,
Dubnik
I'm
story,
like
right?
exactly, yeah. I feel like you got to kind of stick with this guy because and then that's the playoffs for you, right? It's a roller coaster. Like it's tough to lose, and it's fun to win. So we'll see what
Well,
happens. So go ahead.
he's probably the most stable goalie they've had since Rolison.
Hmm. Yeah,
Like if you really look back on it, I mean
Talbot
having
was pretty good there.
right, yeah, Cam Talbot, yeah.
Yeah. And the fact that he's still playing is a testament to like his longevity too. Like it's the NHL is tough, man. Like like not a lot of guys over 30. Like look at that roster. There's not a lot of guys over 30, man. You got a couple old guys like Perry and Derek Ryan, and Ekholm's like 34. It gets kind of thin after that, after that 30 plus crowd. And that's I don't think we're like one of the youngest teams in the league. In fact, we might be one of the older ones. So
Yeah, so we
Yeah,
kind
especially
of
post deadline.
you mentioned the name Shesterkin, a drafted goalie. He had a very, very heavy workload in the East final. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to take the New York Rangers to the promised land. Uh, I'll get Jimmy to break that series down really quick, and then we'll get Kyle's thoughts on that before we wrap up here.
Well, I mean, it was funny because the Rangers won the President's Trophy and a lot of guys had a pretty good year. And so people are asking me, do you think the Rangers can win the Stanley Cup? And my answer was no. Um, Based on how they generate offense, I didn't feel like it translated well to the playoffs. They're a very good team at generating slot shot chances, and they're very good off the rush. And typically, when it comes into the playoffs, you generate most of your chances off the cycle. And it's not really something that the Rangers are really strong at. They had a lot of depth, they had a lot of good pieces. Once kind of Fox kind of went on one leg after the Jensen hit, I knew we were kind of in a bit of trouble. I was surprised we got out of Carolina. I think one of the only reasons was the fact that Anderson was pretty bad. And then once Florida rolled around, it wasn't even close. Like if
no,
Shesterkin didn't do what he did, we would have got swept. Like
100%.
they weren't in any of those games. I would sit there on the couch and I would just watch Shesterkin. I'm like, okay, maybe he's just going to win this series himself. He was unbelievable. I mean, I think he had a 935. If you can't win with a 935, there's a problem. And Florida was just better. There's no they forechecked, they closed off the wall. They couldn't make a pass out of their zone. I can't remember how many times the Rangers would throw it up the wall and it's just turnover after turnover after turnover. And I said to my wife, she's like, wow, she's like, it's 2-2. They got a chance. I'm like, this series is over. Like, trust me. we're not, and even if we got through, probably swept by the Oilers. So, yeah, I mean, I love my Rangers. I think they are a good team, but Laviolette pretty much took them about as far as that roster was going to go, in my opinion. I've been watching this team for years, and it sucks. Would have been different had Fox maybe not got injured. Probably not a lot different. I think there was some mobility issues on the blue line that Florida really took advantage of. And when you go back and you're just getting hit after hit after hit after a while, I don't know, maybe as a defenseman, I don't think you're super excited when it happens for the 50th time in a 7-game series and you're already probably ice packs after every game. So credit to Florida. They shut it down. Like it wasn't, I never felt like we were in any of the games. Maybe a couple times in a few periods we play well, but not for a 60-minute stretch. So maybe that's kind of a downer on the Rangers. Maybe they were a little better than what I'm describing, but from what I saw, it wasn't close.
Yeah,
That
and
was
we
any other
kind of
goalie, and that's over in 4.
and we kind of touched on it last podcast too about like some of those top guys disappearing and never actually coming out. So,
It's not even
Kyle,
that they disappeared. Florida
yeah,
shut them
yeah.
out. Like they had nothing. They gave them nothing.
I was actually gonna ask Kyle if do you have a little bit of a soft spot for the Panthers or
I mean, if they were in the finals against Dallas, I'd probably cheer for them, but like
Edmonton kid, hey?
this morning, well, this morning, so my friend and I had talked about, I said, hey, like this is about 2 rounds ago. I said, if Florida and Edmonton get to the finals, I'm going to reach out to my alumni contact and see if we can get tickets. If we get tickets to games 1 and 2, we got to go. So I reached out and yeah, there's no comps in the playoffs. So tickets starting at 422 US to get you in the cheap seats. So, on top of the flights and all that, it's a long way to go. So we decided against it pretty much immediately. But that would have been tough because I would have been cheering for the Oilers, but you really can't. If the tickets were comped, you absolutely cannot wear an Oilers jersey. You cannot
Full
you
face
can't
paint, hey?
openly cheer for a team that against the team that just gave you free tickets, $1,000 promo for my 9 games of service. So yeah, one of the no face paint for sure. No Papa Stanley outfit. So
No.
but yeah, Jim, you must be hating that rumor that Shesterkin's getting traded for Skinner at the draft. That's it must be bothering you.
I don't know. I don't know with Bouchard, McDavid, Draisaitl contracts up. I don't know if there's enough room for
No,
Shesterkin because
I don't think there's room for Shesterkin's contract in the Rangers, so they're gonna have to figure something out. They might have to buy out Truba, is what I'm hearing. So,
there's a couple of things I've heard with that. Buyout's a possibility. I've also heard that they may not move him at all, which is not good news for me. And also, I believe San Jose's got about $37 million in cap space, so if he's willing to go there.
yeah, well, you get lots of rubber there. Yeah, it's the salary cap's tough, man. At least it's on the rise again. But like they got to find money for Lafreniere. Lafreniere, like he's gonna command more money on the extension and like it's yeah, there's always someone, right? Like
Yeah.
Draisaitl's they got to sign Draisaitl. He's probably gonna be 13.5,
Well,
for a
now look
year.
at Bouchard.
I
Bouchard's
don't.
extended same.
Yeah, I
Like,
mean
what do
they
you
don't
do
have
with
to.
him?
They don't have to extend either of them. Right. I think they might have to extend. I think it's more urgent to extend Draisaitl. I don't think Bouchard becomes a UFA after next year. I think he's still RFA,
He's an RFA, yeah.
but I think Dry might become a UFA after next year. So I think it's more important to extend him.
Hmm.
But like, yeah, dude, I don't know. Like the Nurse contract, and you can't fault Nurse for signing it, but that's going to be a bit of an anchor. So
Well, it's the biggest problem with that one is that it's these next 4 years are tied up in signing bonus money, which is protected against buyout. So
is it?
it's a big cost if you're buying out with signing
I
bonus.
think I think the well, he's not worth buying out. He's a good player.
Yeah.
He's just not $9.5 million player. The one that they could probably do without is Evander Kane. For whatever reason, he just isn't as good as he used to be, and he makes $5 million. There's a guy that lives across the street from me who would love to come here, Jake DeBrusk, and he's a much better version of, not as physical, but he would fit into that top six better, and
Mhm.
wouldn't probably not cost 5 million, but probably close. But, so we'll see.
It's so funny on how everything's now about moving money around, almost trying to find fits, and signing guys hitting their contracts at the right time, and it's so hard now, especially with that
Yep.
hard cap.
Yeah, you need a capologist slash accountant, right? You need Ben Wyatt from Parks and Rec to be on your, to be working for your team, right? So,
Well, you look at the Nurse, like it's so funny because I don't criticize even the Oilers for signing Nurse, because Nurse has that incredible year in the Canadian bubble division or whatever.
yeah,
And so what do you do? So he's 20, I think, what is he, 24 at the time? He's
yep,
coming off, he was about top four in Norris voting,
yep.
24. Like, what message does that send to McDavid, Draisaitl? Hey, listen, we got this up and comer, but we're not going to extend them for whatever reason. I think they were handcuffed because Seth Jones had signed, Makar had signed, Fox had
Gretzky,
signed.
yeah.
Yeah.
He's a good serviceable player. It's people look at him the same way that I have a cheap friend of mine looks at like chicken wings that are $21. He's like, I'm like, are they great? He's like, they're pretty good, but they're $21. I'm like, compared to what? 18.50, $19. It's the same thing. If Nurse was making 6.5 instead of 9.5, people wouldn't be complaining. You know what I mean? So I don't think, but they're complaining because it's 9.5. And
Mhm.
currently that 9.5 doesn't hamstring us, but it might in the future, right? So I don't know. People just love to, they put value on the dollar amount and the play, right? So
Yeah.
But who
yeah.
but
Yeah.
who cares if in 2 weeks the Oilers have the Stanley Cup, right?
I wouldn't
Yep.
care if Jacob Trouba made $8 million if we win the Stanley Cup. I wouldn't care if he made $15 million as a fan when
Exactly.
Absolutely.
we win the
Yeah,
cup.
We've
absolutely.
we've taken a lot of Kyle's time here tonight, so just want to thank you for everything tonight, and we hope that you can be a little bit of more regular on our podcast, because we really appreciate it. And just like you said, we like talking with people who actually understand hockey and um and kind of get it. So we'll just end the podcast on this. We'll get your predictions for the final here.
Ooh. Mm. Oilers in 7.
Jimmy, do you want to give us your prediction?
Yeah, I'm gonna go Oilers in 7. I think special teams will be the difference.
All right. You know what? I was 0 for 2 in the conference finals, so I'm gonna say Florida in 6.
Oh wow, Phil.
Hope you're
That's
wrong.
that's
Yeah,
that's bold. I don't mind the bold prediction. That's okay.
yeah. You're gonna have to find
Um,
a new find a new realtor, I guess.
It's gonna
Um,
be it's gonna be tight. Honestly, I think it's gonna come down to there's such contrasting styles, and it'll be the one that can execute its game plan the best. But I think at the end of the day, star power and special teams will be the I think it'll be that slight margin of difference.
yeah, we'll see how Florida handles playing in Edmonton. It's a lot louder. It's a different atmosphere. I was at a game in Florida this year. It's a beautiful building. It opened the year I got drafted, so they've surely renovated it, and but it's just not. I don't know, maybe it's different in the playoffs, but it's not well, it was sold out, but it was not what I would call a lively atmosphere or a very knowledgeable hockey base, right? So
Hmm.
there you go.
I
You
think
heard it right from the horse's mouth. Thank you everybody for listening to the Cheap Seats. Again, you can find us on YouTube, X, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere you get your podcasts, you'll find us there. Go check us out on YouTube as well. If you feel so inclined, give us a like and a follow. And again, Kyle, thank you so much. And
you're very welcome. Thanks for having me, guys.
yeah,
Thank you.
and we will catch you guys. Jimmy, we have another podcast on Thursday.
Yeah. Yeah, Thursday.
And I believe
yeah,
we have a guest then, but we'll
yeah,
we'll
that
keep you
episode will
guys
be
in
out Friday
This one will be out on Tuesday. So,
tomorrow.
okay, tomorrow. Thanks for listening to the Cheap Seats.